4:22 a.m., May 26, 1989. Two ultralight aircraft, each weighing less than a refrigerator, buzz low over the Berlin Wall. They're heading into East Germany, not out of it. Red Soviet stars mark their wings. The pilots wear stolen East German military greatcoats. Every gun on that wall points outward, because for 28 years, no one has ever tried to break in. Why would two men who had already escaped East Germany fly back into the most heavily fortified border on Earth? And why did the guards who spotted them, rifles raised, hesitate just long enough to let them go? The answer reaches back 14 years to a young border guard standing knee-deep in the freezing Elbe River, making a promise to himself. He would not stop until his entire family breathed free air. This is how the Bethke brothers broke the Berlin Wall. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. August 13th, 1961. 7-year-old Ingo Bethke wakes to the crackle of a radio and his mother's voice, sharp with alarm. Overnight, 30,000 East German soldiers have unspooled 150 kilometers of barbed wire through the heart of Berlin in a single night. Within hours, construction crews begin laying concrete blocks. Ingo's parents, both officers in the Volkspolizei, the East German police, assure him the barrier exists to protect them from Western fascists. Ingo doesn't understand politics. He understands that yesterday he could walk to his cousin's apartment in Kreuzberg, 20 minutes away. Today, soldiers with Kalashnikovs stand between them. The Bethke family lives in Treptow, a working-class district on the eastern side of the new divide. Ingo's father climbs the party ranks, a loyal functionary who believes socialism will triumph over capitalism within his lifetime. Ingo tries to be the son his father wants. He joins the Young Pioneers, later the Free German Youth, salutes the red flag at assemblies, recites slogans he barely understands. But at night, he presses his ear to a hidden transistor radio and listens to Radio Luxembourg broadcasting the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. He reads smuggled copies of Western magazines. The gap between his public obedience and private longing widens every year. By 1975, Ingo was 21 years old and nursing a secret that could get him shot. He has decided to escape. That spring, the National People's Army conscripts him and assigns him, of all things, to guard the border. His post, an 80-kilometer stretch of the Elbe River near Schnackenburg, where the water forms a natural boundary between east and west. For 18 months, Ingo patrols with a rifle on his shoulder and a notepad hidden in his boot. He records guard rotations, searchlight patterns, tripwires, mines. He notes that the current runs fastest at a bend, and that a dense fog often rises from the water between 2 and 4 a.m. in spring. The regime has stationed him at the very point where he will stage his betrayal. One night in May 1975, Ingo and a trusted friend named Klaus slipped out of their barracks after midnight. Each carries wire cutters, dark clothing, a compass, and a cheap rubber air mattress purchased at a sporting goods store in Magdeburg. They crawl 300 meters through wet grass to the outer fence, cut a hole just wide enough for a man's shoulders, and wriggle through. The death strip beyond is 50 meters of raked sand designed to show footprints, bordered by a second fence and overlooked by a watchtower manned by guards with orders to shoot on sight. Ingo has timed the guards' rounds. They have 11 minutes before the next patrol. 11 minutes to cross 50 meters of open ground, cut through a second fence, and reach the river without triggering a tripwire, stepping on a mine or catching a bullet in the back. They sprint across the sand, feet sinking with each step. They flatten themselves against the inner fence and cut through, metal biting into their fingers. The river lies ahead, black and cold and promising. Ingo inflates his mattress, slides into water so cold it steals his breath, and begins to paddle. Klaus is beside him. 45 minutes in, halfway across, a patrol boat's spotlight slices the darkness upstream. Ingo presses his face into the mattress and goes still. The light passes over him, once, twice, then swings away. A low fog, just as he'd noted in his observations, blurs the water's surface enough to hide a prone silhouette. Ingo's hands touch the muddy western bank. A West German border guard finds him shivering in the reeds, hauls him up, and wraps a wool blanket around his shoulders. The guard smirks. "Cold night for a swim." Ingo, teeth chattering so hard he can barely speak, manages 4 words. "Not if you're swimming out." He is free. But 400 kilometers to the southeast, in a cramped apartment in East Berlin, his family is about to pay for his freedom. Within hours of Ingo's disappearance, Stasi officers pound on the Bethke door. They interrogate Ingo's parents for 6 hours, then strip them of their police positions. His older brother Holger, 22, is hauled into Hohenschönhausen prison for 3 days of questioning. His youngest brother Egbert, just 16, is labeled a flight risk and assigned a surveillance detail, 2 plainclothes officers who follow him everywhere. In the coded letters that reach Ingo over the following months, he reads between the lines, his family is suffering because of him. Freedom, he realizes, tastes bitter when you drink it alone. What exactly would Ingo do to fix that? And how long would his brothers have to wait before he found a way? 8 years carve new lines into Ingo Bethke's face. He settles in Cologne, tends bar at a small pub, dates women who never understand why he stares east at the sound of sirens. Every few months, a letter arrives from East Berlin, words chosen carefully to slip past the censors, but Ingo knows how to decode them. His parents have been reassigned to menial jobs. Egbert has been denied admission to university despite top marks. The Stasi has blacklisted him. Holger, now 30, works as a mechanic and keeps his head down, but his letters carry an undercurrent of desperation. In early 1983, a single sentence reaches Ingo. "I cannot live like this anymore. It is my turn." Holger's plan sounds like a fever dream. Fire an arrow from east to west trailing fishing line, use that line to pull a steel cable across, then zipline over the wall. No one has ever attempted an aerial crossing. Holger spends weeks in a public park practicing archery, telling curious onlookers he's training for a circus act. He measures the distance from a rooftop on Schillingstrasse to a building in the French sector, 147 meters across the death strip. He calculates the weight a steel cable can bear, the angle of descent required to clear a 4-meter wall topped with pipe. On the night of March 26, 1983, Holger dresses as an electrician, coils 200 meters of cable over his shoulder, and enters a 5-story apartment building near the wall. He climbs to the attic, pries open a skylight, and waits. Across the divide, Ingo crouches on a rooftop in West Berlin with a walkie-talkie pressed to his ear. The plan calls for Holger to fire when the gap between guard patrols is longest. Holger's first arrow falls short. It lands in the death strip, 140 meters from freedom. He curses under his breath, knocks a second arrow, adjusts his angle, and releases. This time the arrow sails over the wall, trailing a whisper-thin line that Ingo retrieves in the darkness. He ties it to a steel cable, signals Holger via 2 clicks on the radio, and reverses his car slowly down the street to pull the cable taut. In the attic, Holger secures his end to a chimney, clips a homemade trolley to the cable, and tests it with his weight. The cable holds. He clips a safety loop around his waist, grips the trolley handles, and steps off the roof into empty air. The descent lasts 12 seconds, the longest 12 seconds of Holger's life. He accelerates to nearly 50 kilometers per hour, wind roaring past his ears, arms burning as he grips the trolley handles. The floodlit death strip blurs beneath him. Raked sand, coiled wire, the dark shapes of anti-vehicle barriers. At the lowest point of the arc, 7 meters above the wall, his boots pass directly over a guard's helmet. The guard looks up. Their eyes meet for one frozen instant. Holger sees the young man's face illuminated by floodlight, wide eyes, mouth open, rifle still slung over his shoulder. Then Holger is past, the cable singing behind him, braking hard as he reaches the western rooftop. Ingo grabs his arm, drags him over the parapet, and the 2 brothers collapse onto cold tar, chest heaving, laughter and sobs tangled together in their throats. The guard below never fires a shot. Perhaps he is too stunned. Perhaps for one moment he roots for the escaping man. Perhaps he simply cannot process what he has just witnessed, a human being sliding through the air like a ghost, vanishing into the west before he can even unsling his rifle. Holger will never know, and he will never stop wondering. 2 brothers free, one still behind the wall. But Egbert Bethke is no ordinary target. The Stasi watches his every move. How could Ingo and Holger possibly reach him? And what insane method would they invent next? Egbert Bethke turned 25 in 1984, and his life has shrunk to the dimensions of a cage. Stasi informants, neighbors, co-workers, even a former girlfriend recruited with threats against her family, report his movements daily. His mail arrives already opened, resealed with clumsy strips of tape. He is denied a telephone. His apartment is bugged. He finds the microphone one afternoon, hidden behind an electrical socket, and leaves it in place because removing it would only invite worse. Twice, he applies for legal emigration to the West. Twice, the applications are rejected without explanation. A Stasi officer tells him directly, "You will die in this country." The regime has decided that Egbert will never leave. He begins to believe them. Ingo and Holger, reunited in Cologne, spend months debating how to extract their youngest brother. A tunnel is impossible. The soil near the wall is saturated with sensors that detect vibrations, and previous tunnel attempts have ended in arrests or shootings. A forged passport will not survive the checkpoints. Egbert's face is too well known to border guards who carry his photograph. In the summer of 1987, Holger reads a magazine article about ultralight aircraft, motorized hang gliders that weigh under 150 kilograms and fly below radar detection thresholds. An idea takes shape, absurd and beautiful. If they cannot go under the wall or through it, they will fly over it and land inside East Berlin to pick Egbert up. The brothers sell their pub for 40,000 Deutsche Marks and spend every pfennig on the plan. They purchase 2 Icarus C-22 ultralights from a dealer in Munich, barely enough to lift 2 men and a fuel tank. Neither brother has ever piloted an aircraft of any kind. They travel to a remote airfield in the Dordogne region of France, pay a retired instructor named Jean-Claude to teach them to fly, and spend 6 weeks crashing into fences, overshooting runways, and learning to trust machines that feel like bicycles with wings. Ingo nearly flips his ultralight on day 3. Holger stalls in midair and drops 50 meters before recovering. By the autumn of 1988, both could take off in darkness, navigate by compass, and land on an unpaved surface in low light. They are not skilled pilots. They are adequate pilots, which will have to be enough. They smuggle the disassembled ultralights into West Berlin, hidden beneath tarps in a rented van. In a warehouse in the Kreuzberg district, they reassembled the aircraft and modified them for the mission. Extra fuel tanks welded behind the seats, engines tuned for maximum thrust, frames repainted military green. On the underside of each wing, they stencil a large red Soviet star. Ingo acquires 2 East German officers' greatcoats and helmets from a theatrical costume shop. The disguise is psychological. A guard who spots red stars and military uniforms may hesitate for a crucial second, unsure whether the aircraft are friendly. The final piece is the hardest. They must tell Egbert exactly when and where to be without alerting the Stasi. Through a chain of couriers, a truck driver who crosses the border legally, a baker in East Berlin who owes Holger a favor, they deliver a single sentence. May 11th, 4 a.m., Treptower Park, near the Soviet Memorial. Be ready to run. Egbert received the note in late April 1989. He reads it 3 times, burns it in his kitchen sink, and flushes the ashes. For 2 weeks, he cannot sleep. He rehearses the route from his apartment to the park. He chooses hiding spots among the bushes near the massive bronze statue of a Soviet soldier cradling a child. He wonders if this is a Stasi trap, or a dream, or both. But what choice does he have? He will be there. If you've learned something from this story so far, consider subscribing. It takes 2 seconds and helps more people discover escapes like this one. Now, back to the Bethkes, because they're about to discover that even the best plans can be undone by something no one can control. May 11th, 1989, 3:45 a.m. Ingo and Holger roll their ultralights onto a grass field in Gatow on the western edge of Berlin. The engines cough to life. The brothers perform a final radio check, don their greatcoats, and strap into their cockpits. At precisely 4 a.m., they throttle forward and lift into the pre-dawn darkness, climbing to 250 meters, high enough to clear the wall, low enough to evade radar. The flight east takes 11 minutes. Ingo descends toward Treptower Park while Holger climbs to 300 meters to serve as lookout. But as Ingo drops below 100 meters, he sees nothing, only a thick gray blanket of fog rising off the Spree River. He circles once, twice, straining for any glimpse of ground. Holger's voice crackles through the radio. No visibility. Abort. Ingo's throat tightens. They have 22 liters of fuel remaining, barely enough to return. He pulls up and banks west. In the park below, Egbert hears the faint buzz of an engine. He scrambles from his hiding spot near the bronze soldier's boots, heart slamming against his ribs, and scans the sky. Nothing. Only gray. The sound fades, swallowed by the fog as if it never existed. He crouches in the wet grass for 2 hours, shivering, listening for any hint of the engine's return. A dog barks somewhere across the park. A tram rattles past on distant tracks. But no aircraft appears. When the sun rises and the first joggers enter the park, Egbert forces himself to leave. He walks home in a daze, unsure whether to feel grief that his brothers failed or relief that he was not caught waiting for them. In his apartment, he sits on his bed and stares at the wall. He does not cry. He has forgotten how. When Ingo lands in Gatow, he rips off his helmet and kicks the wheel strut so hard he dents the aluminum. Holger says nothing. They push the ultralights into the warehouse and sit on the cold concrete floor for a long time, not looking at each other. The fog was an accident of weather, a low-pressure system drifting in from the Spree at exactly the wrong moment, but it feels like a verdict. Their fuel is low, their money nearly exhausted, and East German radar operators have logged 2 unidentified low-flying objects over the city. Somewhere in a Stasi office, an analyst is writing a report. The window is closing. They have perhaps 2 weeks before the regime figures out what happened and floods the border zone with additional patrols. 14 days later, they tried again. On the night of May 25th, Ingo lies awake in his apartment, running through every variable: wind speed, fuel load, approach angle. At 2 a.m. on May 26th, he walks to the warehouse. Holger is already there, checking the engines. Neither speaks. They load the ultralights onto a flatbed truck and drive through empty streets to the Gatow field. At 4:17 a.m., engines roaring, they lift off. The sky is clear, the stars sharp. Ingo's altimeter reads 250 meters as he crosses the wall, 6 seconds over the death strip, and then he is inside East Berlin airspace. He descends toward Treptower Park. Through his goggles, he spots a figure sprinting across the grass, arms raised. Egbert. Ingo cuts the throttle and glides down, the propeller windmilling in silence. The wheels bounce once on the wet grass, twice, and the ultralight skids to a stop 30 meters from his brother. Egbert is already running, legs pumping, face contorted with desperate hope. 14 years collapse into the 10 seconds it takes him to reach the aircraft. His face is thinner than Ingo remembers, cheekbones sharp, eyes ringed with exhaustion. But his eyes are the same, and they are streaming with tears. "Get on!" Ingo shouts. There is no time for anything else. Egbert throws himself onto the rear seat, a narrow strip of canvas barely wide enough for a man's hips. He wraps his arms around Ingo's chest and holds on with the grip of a man who has waited half his life for this moment, fingernails digging through the greatcoat, knuckles white. Ingo opens the throttle. The propeller screams. The ultralight lurches forward, bouncing over uneven ground, and the airspeed indicator creeps upward. 40, 50, 60 kilometers per hour. At 70, the wheels leave the grass. They are airborne with 180 kilograms of human weight, climbing slowly, the engine straining against the load. Above them, Holger banks into formation, his ultralight sliding into position off their left wing. Below, sirens begin to wail, a rising chorus that spreads across Treptower Park like a wave. A guard in a watchtower swings his spotlight and catches the silhouette of 2 aircraft climbing westward. Green wings, red stars, military profiles. He raises his rifle, sights along the barrel, and hesitates. Is this a Soviet drill? An exercise no one briefed him about? He has never seen aircraft like these, but the markings are unmistakable. The moment stretches, 2 seconds, 3, 4, and then the ultralights shrink into the western sky, dropping below the tree line, disappearing into the gray pre-dawn haze. The guard lowers his weapon. He does not fire. He will spend the rest of his life wondering if he should have. At 4:31 a.m., Ingo and Holger set their aircraft down on a lawn near the Reichstag, the old German parliament building that stands just meters from the wall on the western side. Egbert stumbles off the ultralight, drops to his knees, and presses his palms into the grass. He is sobbing. Ingo kneels beside him. Holger joins them. For a long moment, the three brothers hold each other in the gray half-light of dawn, 14 years of separation dissolving into the damp Berlin air. A few early joggers stop and stare at the strange scene. 2 battered aircraft on the lawn, 3 men weeping and laughing and embracing. One jogger asks if they need help. Holger wipes his eyes and grins. "No," he says, "we're finally home." But how did the world react to the most audacious escape in Cold War history? And what happened to the brothers when the wall itself came down just 6 months later? That evening, the Bethke brothers sit in a corner booth of a quiet West Berlin pub, 3 steins of beer sweating on the table between them. Egbert's hands still tremble. He lifts his glass twice before managing to drink. "I thought I'd never see you again," he says, his voice cracking. "And then you came out of the sky, like angels." Ingo laughs, a short, exhausted sound. Holger raises his glass. "To the craziest pilots in Berlin." They clink their steins and drink deeply. Outside, the wall still stands, gray and ugly and bristling with wire. But inside this pub, for these 3 men, it no longer exists. News of the airborne rescue spreads through West Germany within days. Reporters dub Ingo and Holger the Angels of Freedom. The East German government files a formal protest, accusing the brothers of violating sovereign airspace, a complaint that only amplifies the story's reach. Ingo and Holger give interviews but deflect praise. "We didn't do anything heroic," Ingo tells a television crew. "We just refused to accept that our family would be separated forever." 6 months later, on the night of November 9th, 1989, an East German spokesman accidentally announced that travel restrictions had been lifted immediately without delay. Within hours, tens of thousands of East Berliners flood the checkpoints. Guards, overwhelmed and without orders, open the gates. By midnight, crowds are dancing on top of the wall, swinging sledgehammers, passing champagne, weeping and singing. The barrier that divided a city, a nation, and a family for 28 years crumbles in a single night. Ingo, Holger, and Egbert watch the footage together in Holger's apartment. None of them speak for a long time. Finally, Egbert says, "We beat it. We beat it by 6 months." Ingo shakes his head. "We didn't beat the wall," he says. "We just refused to let it beat us." The Bethke brothers never sought fame. In the years that followed, they returned to ordinary lives. Ingo reopened a pub. Holger worked as a mechanic. Egbert studied engineering. They gave occasional interviews, reminding people that the wall was not just concrete and wire. It was the thousands of families it tore apart, the dreams it crushed, the lives it claimed. At least 140 people died trying to cross that barrier. The Bethkes were among the lucky ones, lucky and stubborn and unwilling to accept that geography should determine whether brothers could share a meal. Their story endures because it inverts the logic of escape. Most people who fled East Germany ran toward their own freedom. The Bethkes ran toward each other. Ingo swam the Elbe alone in 1975, racked with guilt before he even reached the far bank. 8 years later, he helped Holger zipline across the wall. 6 years after that, he flew a motorized kite into the most surveilled airspace on the planet to retrieve his youngest brother. Each act was riskier than the last. Each was also more necessary, because the Bethkes understood something the regime never did. A wall that separates families is not a wall that protects anyone. The Berlin Wall fell 35 years ago. Treptower Park is open to tourists now. You can walk past the Soviet War Memorial where Egbert crouched in the darkness, waiting for angels. The death strip is a bicycle path. The guard towers are museums. But the questions the Bethkes answered with their lives remain. What would you risk for the people you love? How far would you fly to bring them home? If you want to see another family that defied impossible odds to reunite, check out our video on the Strelzik and Wetzel families, two households that built a hot air balloon in secret and floated their children over the wall in the dead of night. That story begins with a sewing machine, a pile of bed sheets, and a question no one dared ask aloud. What if we just went up?